I guess before I get started, just a quick show of hands. Who's like heard of Railgun? Okay, cool. Because it was going to be really ironic if I was talking about product market fit and no one knew what Railgun was. um, yeah, so I'm Alan. I'm one of the core contributors to the Railgun Privacy Project. I've been doing this for about 5 years. My background is actually in finance, very specifically offshore finance. So you guys have heard about rich people sort of hiding money offshore and Cayman entities and the Turks and Caicos and stuff like that. I did that for about 7 years before I got into the on-chain privacy stuff. Um, I guess like before I get started, I want to talk a little bit about like why Railgun sort of made like product market fit for me and caused me to quit my job that I've been working for about 7 years. I started out in crypto pretty similarly to a lot of people, speculating. Um, it was really after a doxing event in a Telegram group. A guy showed me my own wallet on Etherscan. Who here knows like about like token gated communities on Telegram, like Collabland Bot and stuff like that? Yeah. So I was in a small one of those, had the token, talked about a bunch of different positions that I had held and sold and things like this, and he walked me through how you can do on-chain analytics through something as simple as Etherscan. And that sort of opened up my mind to, shit, it's not private. Pseudonymity isn't enough. Um, and so I started looking at a lot of different things. Naturally, Tornado Cash was the thing back in the day, but it sort of lacked a lot of the various things that I felt like I wanted in a privacy solution. And then there was a white paper that had come out called basically Railgun. And the supposition of the whole paper was that you don't have to do a layer 2 or a side chain or try to lure people away from the watering hole that they're in already to get private DeFi. You could do it all within the rules of consensus on Ethereum. And I thought that was really, really cool. And so I'll try to like very anecdotally talk about product market fit. None of this is gospel. I'm a bit of an idiot, so but hopefully this will resonate with some people. My biggest pet peeve when people talk about product market fit is they talk about it as an end state. How do you plan to reach product market fit, especially when you're talking to people who are like VCs and things like this. And I think that this is sort of a systemic issue of solutionism in the world of tech, where people will build something and then try to find the nails for the hammer that they have made. But I would argue and present to you guys today that it's actually a mirror, right? It's a reflection of what you're doing at that given time, and that can sort of, that can change over time. And I'll try to talk about Railgun, maybe look in the mirror a little bit. So a lot of projects use the same metrics in crypto, right? TVL creasing, Discord, Twitter, people liking and retweeting, following a project or something like this, a token price mooning, maybe some partnerships and integrations being announced. And I think that these are really, really cool things, but I think one of the things that you have to be wary of is that bullish metrics can actually be a net negative and sort of a false signal. Railgun TVL has gone up and to the right, which is really cool. The Discord and Telegram have people in it talking about stuff, and 20, however many followers on a community Railgun Twitter. It's pretty cool. But the reality is a lot of this stuff, it takes a long ass time. It's a long, long time. In fact, Railgun, when it was deployed 3 years and 45 days ago, I took that screenshot yesterday, it was not great. In fact, after about 6 months of being deployed, the TVL was a whopping $10,000. And so I think that sometimes we can sort of try to stimulate these growth metrics in the wrong way, and this is a bit of a bad capital allocation. And so I want to talk a little bit about exactly what product market fit is, at least to me. We'll talk about some of the claptraps. Crypto's full of mirages, right? We have these really dastardly inflated incentive programs. I think Terra Luna was a great example of this. They were offering yields of 20% in a market that was bearing 5%, which people didn't see as a red flag, but we can let somebody else talk about that at a different presentation. Now we've changed that to points. People are points farming instead of airdrop farming. There's all these different KOL deals. And I would even argue that sometimes like ecosystem funds are common claptraps. We'll see these venture capital-backed L2s come in with a lot of money, lure people to build. And just a quick show of hands, who's developers in here? Sick, hell yeah, my crowd. If somebody offered you a couple $100,000 to build some dumb shit on an L2, like you'd probably do it, right? Yeah. And so like this is actually this is like a false narrative in my opinion, right? Does the world actually need your L2, right? Is that a product market fit? Maybe, maybe not, right? And so you really have to ask yourself, are people farming your project or like is it actual user growth, right? Is it solving a real world problem that if you turned all that stuff off, people would use it? Like would they still be using it? And so let's talk about identifying these people, right? So Railgun is a suite of smart contracts, right? It's an SDK, and it's a bunch of smart contracts that allow you to do cool DeFi stuff, right? So primarily the product is for builders, right? So I'll talk a little bit about that market, at least from my hot take, right? So as we can see here, it's not measurable in the same way, right? You want to look at integrations, developer attention. What do the repos look like? Do you guys have issues on the GitHub? Are people doing pull requests? What are the integrations looking like? And then one of my favorite things that we've done over the years is go to hackathons and see how hard Railgun is to build with. And I think that that's one of the biggest criticisms I have of the project. It's super hard to build with. Railgun SDK is over 500,000 lines of code. It's all intertingled, and the docs are pretty shit. And so this is something that we sort of take and look in the mirror and say, where are the problems with Railgun, right? And so I guess sort of pointing back to the points I was making earlier about spending money on points farming and paying developers, you really have to be careful that you don't misallocate too much capital to that kind of stuff, right? And a great way to see if you have product market fit is to actually turn all that off, or even better yet, make people pay for it. Railgun charges 25 basis points on transactions, and in spite of that, it still does $250 million in transaction volume every month. So people really want to use it, at least on the end user side. I think another thing that I've seen, at least in the crypto development world, is that we have a hard time reconciling that people have to pay for stuff. We have a lot of developers in here. If anybody wants to raise their hand, that they would work for free on stuff. Right, sick. Hell yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. We got some cool stuff that I want you to do. So the reality is most people need to get paid, right? They have families, worldly needs. They have to eat, these sort of things, right? Going to hackathons, conference participation, me coming here all the way from Japan was not free. It cost me money to get here. One of the things that actually cost a shitload of money that surprised me when I got into this field was audits and security. Railgun has gone through, I think, 18 different audits, and they range from $10,000 to $250,000 for an audit. And those things can be really, really, really expensive. Bug bounties as well. If you want to actually lure in white hat hackers and not black hats, you have to have a pretty stout bug bounty program for people to come and report bugs to you. Otherwise, they'll just yoink the cash instead. Legal, right? Lawyers cost tons of money. If the whole crypto thing doesn't work out, I'm probably going to become a lawyer. Hosting, tooling, marketing, you guys know. And the reality is we have to ask ourselves, who the hell's going to pay for it, right? You have the cool things that people do initially, which are venture capital, grants, ecosystem funds, public donations. Some of the things that you could do during ongoing development or fees, like Railgun subscription models. I believe NIM has a subscription model on their VPN. There's various premium services that exist out there in the world. One of the things that I really want to drive home, and I hope people appreciate, is that we can't really rely on the benevolence of early ETH adopters forever. We have to sort of grasp that reality. And so Railgun sort of did the fee model, right? And what it does is it takes 25 basis points of every transaction that goes in the vault logic. And so I guess one of the interesting things and one of the challenges for that is that it takes a myriad of tokens. And this is really cool because it creates treasury stability, but also creates a lot of volatility. As you can see, ETH is a very popular token for Railgun, and ETH did really great until it didn't do very great. And then it did really bad, right? And then it did really good. And so you have like a lot of this volatility. And so if you're going to be doing fees in this way, I guess a 2 cents from someone who's sort of participated in an ecosystem like that is sort of be aware of the volatility. The runway you think you have isn't actually there always. And so one of the things I guess I'll leave with, right, is that PMF isn't static. It changes over time, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges in crypto because people sort of want to do things in an immutable way, and that actually isn't true of the market around you. It's not immutable. In fact, it's very nebulous and changes over time. And so making sure that you architect for immutability and long-term development is something that you really have to balance. And this is something that we work on as contributors to Railgun. We did a beta contract. We're on a V2 now. And the architecture, the way it exists now, isn't actually very fit for the way that the market exists today. It's made to do DeFi interactions, right? So you can do swaps. It's done hundreds of $1 million in swaps. You can provide LP to Uniswap and do all sorts of cool stuff, right? But whenever this stuff got scoped in 2021, DeFi wasn't what it is today, right? There wasn't limit orders. CalSwap wasn't a thing in 21. And so how do we deal with that kind of stuff has really been the crux of research for V3 for us. And so one of the things that we really got to be aware of is not only how are we going to pay for it, but also sort of plan for the, I guess, the expectation that ideals in the market change and what people want and need in the market changes pretty drastically as well. And so, yeah, that's really it. I really wanted to kind of end it and hope for people having questions if you had any.
One quick check. Mike, yeah. One question for me from my side is like how Railgun will make money in, let's say, 5 years.
So, it's really kind of interesting. I think that it'll probably continue down the fee model, right? I hope that maybe eventually, long term, the fees won't be as high. So we're researching some things with Gnosis Guild on sub accounts that can be held from the private wallet outside of the vault, and that should alleviate a lot of the cycles and round trips that you make to do DeFi interactions. But I think that that'll be something that'll probably continue into the future. I think it's really underappreciated if you're doing something. Railgun's ultimately sort of a financial product, if you will, right? It's made for wallets that people hold money in. And fees have worked for a very, very long time. If the Earth, the Moon, Sun, and stars all align and Railgun sticks to landing on perfect eventually, maybe the DAO will vote to kill the fees. But I think that that's probably TBD.
Check. More questions to Alan? Yeah, please.
Hi, thanks so much for your talk. Product market fit is something like it's a little bit of a mystery. You can't plan it. You can't build product market fit. Can you share the moment when you realized we have product market fit now?
So
how did you?
God, that's a good question. I think the first 2 years was maybe this isn't great, right? Because the beta contracts came out, right? And gas in 21 was really, really high. I mean, I think a Railgun transaction was $500, which no one's going to pay. It was kind of ridiculous. And so that sort of spurred it to go out into BNB chain and then Polygon. And then the V1 contracts came out, and I think we really sort of got our first taste of it whenever we had to do a second ceremony for Railgun. So it started out originally with 8 circuits for the contracts, and then we realized that really wasn't enough for the balances that people were maintaining within the contracts, and so we expanded that out to 54 circuits, and now 57 if we include the private proof of innocence stuff. But I think when it really sort of became abundantly clear is when the news started talking about people like Vitalik using Railgun, and we could start to see people making deposits from places like Coinbase Prime, and then unshielding to Coinbase Prime, and seeing a lot of I guess like interesting users come to the system. But yeah, I mean, having people like Vitalik say like Railgun's cool is like DeFi Jesus turning water into your brand of wine. So that was probably a good one for us.
It's kind of like a follow-up to your question, but do you find it possible to do like direct user research with your users given the specifics of what you're building, or they probably are kind of sensitive to de-anonymization, but you can observe their behavior to understand like what you could do better, but do you get to talk to them directly?
So yeah, we definitely don't do any sort of like tracking. That's sort of antithetical to the project. And so it really relies on a lot of people coming and like raising their hands, which, as you've alluded to, is pretty few and far between. Most people don't say, hi, I'm going to try to use this privacy project to do this very specific thing, right, and dox themselves. And so we go to hackathons a lot for that, right? Our major product is builders, right? So people building things like wallets and integrations with Railgun is what we're after. And so the acid test for us has really been, go to a hackathon and see how hard Railgun is to build with. And sort of reflecting on that, it's a huge challenge. Like Railgun's an absolute bear. The SDK is huge. It's very, very complex. It's all intertwined. And over the first 3 years of building it, the community sort of geared it towards wallets, which sort of put arm's length against like other people who are trying to build other things. So like, for example, if you're going to do, an accounting software for your private address on Railgun, you probably don't really need a lot of the gas estimation stuff. You don't need the ZK stuff. You don't need account generation. You don't need to know how to make a 0ZK address, for example. The only thing you probably need is balance scanning, and that's a couple of thousand lines of code, not the 500,000 that the SDK is that you have to set up. And so the feedback for us has really been your SDK is super hard, your docs suck, and so that's sort of been the last 6 months of brain damage for people, is peeling that apart and putting it. If you guys want to check it out, by the way, all the devs here, it's in GitHub. It's called Railgun Reloaded, so Railgun-Reloaded. You can see the work that's going on there. So that's sort of where we get the feedback, but end user feedback is definitely few and far between for privacy stuff, I would say.
One last here, Alan. Here.
Yes.
And I would like to have a certain connection between privacy projects that reached PMF and the ones who are on the way. And Antonio is here from FluidKey.
Hi, Alan. Thanks for the nice talk. Around product market fit, we are in the phase of we are trying to find our product market fit. We're not profitable yet, no. And what for you has been like a moment or something that helped you getting, because sometimes you feel lost in this. You have a lot of options and you have to figure out what to choose for and what are the best. So how can you suggest what's the best way to find one?
I mean, I guess you kind of assume that there's some people out there like yourself, right? I mean, you can use your own individual needs as like a bit of a compass, if you will. So whenever I started in crypto, I was very dumb many years ago and thought it was private and then realized it wasn't. And then the stuff that existed out there for DeFi privacy was really quite limited. At the time, Tornado Cash was fixed deposits of ETH and only ETH. And then even after that, the development was sort of unideal whenever they started bridging over to XDAI. I don't want to get in like philosophical stuff, but suffice it to say, for me, that was sort of like a security assumption that I didn't want to make, which was I have to rely on a bridge. And so I felt like, you just feel like people will want the same things that you want, right? And you sort of have to go out there and build it and see if people do. And so, yeah, there isn't like a magical way to do it, but more often than not, you can go out and talk to people and see what they think. And you're probably in a good space to do that, given the amount of hands that got raised for developers in the crypto space. So probably do it here.
Thank you, Alan. Round of applause.